Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be discussing some 1.4 patch metagame changes. Now this is before 1.5 open beta has been dropped. However, we can notice some effects from some of the changes in 1.4 and talk about how they are going to change what proper play sort of looks like. There's four things that I wanted to talk about. Two are very, very brief. And then the second or the third one is going to be the construction infrastructure changes. And then the fourth one is going to be the changes in the substitution goods, which is going to be pretty substantive, I think. Now, the first thing is kind of a little bit of a bug fix slash auto queue fix. Is they are going to stop the queue, and they seem to have successfully done this from overbuilding in places where you have no labor. So what was common really before is when you would have Kenya, for example, it would just overbuild tremendously for the arts academies, and it would just build them up to infinity, and they seem to have fixed the problem by saying if there's not enough labor in a place, the auto queue won't build there. And so it used to be you would just build arts academies up into space, and they would just keep building because they don't properly employ up or down in terms of wages. They still don't do that, but at least you won't be building into infinity. The next thing is something that has not been changed, or it's allegedly been changed, but a bunch of people were posting on Reddit that they're saying, hey, it's not fixed, which is that the AI shouldn't swap back to anchorages. I assume that they're going to hotfix to actually fix this, and if this is the case, then what's going to end up happening in terms of metagame is playing inside someone else's customs union is going to get better, all other things equal. However, playing inside someone's customs union might become better or worse depending on how local goods prices are going to work. That's really going to shake things up, and so that's like kind of a bit too much to like really predict, but it's important to keep in mind that in theory playing inside a customs union should be better now. So those are the first two kind of really short ones to talk about, but the next one to talk about is the construction nerf. Construction sectors now use 3 infrastructure instead of 0.2, which this is an enormous nerf, and it is a nerf for countries that specifically do not start out with railroads. If you have railroads, you could just build railroads. This will make it so you build more railroads, so this is going to make it so railroads generally are going to be losing more money than traditional, and that you're going to swap onto railroads a little bit faster than normal. But what I think it really does is it changes kind of the opening salvo for a lot of countries, which I think previously the way to kind of play has been to put road maintenance and encourage resource industries in one place, and road maintenance and encourage manufacturing in another place, and then in each of those places build like a 10-ish construction centers, right? And then crank up in there where you are now getting to benefit from the state construction efficiency from the road maintenance and the throughput from the manufacturing industries and the throughput from economies of scale. So for example, if we were doing that in New York, we have 50% throughput, 20% from encouraging manufacturing, 30% from economies of scale. And so the idea is we would also have a really tall construction sector here, which is giving us state construction efficiency, coupled with also on top of that, the road maintenance. And I think that in terms of metagame, this is going to be considerably worse, especially if you don't start out with railroads. And this is the really important one to emphasize, because most states have like, 40 to 70 base level infrastructure. So if we come in here and we look at this isn't a full state yet, but Uruguay should be, and take a look. They have a river here for plus 20 infrastructure, and with that river, they have 18 infrastructure. Well, this is because they don't have a lot of pop here, so maybe this isn't the best example, but if they had more pop, they would have like 30, 40, something like this, 50 infrastructure. We could probably look at a Chinese province, which is going to be maxed out on terms of the pops. So these guys have 60 infrastructure, and they have a river, so they would have 40 otherwise, 45, something like this. If you build a level 10 construction center there, under this 30 thing, under this 3 per level, this would be very significant. However, they have in the recent few hours, let's jump into this. They have in the recent few hours changed this down from reduced construction infrastructure usage in construction centers from 3 down to 2. So this is a substantive change, but just jumping back into the thing, if we build a level 10 construction sector, over here in where was the province we found? Suzhou, let's say, which has 90. But let's say it's 70 because the Yangtze River will be, not every place has a river. Of course, rivers will be a lot better. Places that have a lot more infrastructure will be considerably better. You know, if we build a level 10 construction sector here, then now suddenly our available like infrastructure that we can use for buildings is very nearly cut in half if you know, if it's a level 40 or if it's like a 40 infrastructure place and we spend 20 of it on, you know, on the construction sectors. And so this makes this building tall strategy a lot worse in places without railroads. If you have railroads, you just slap down the railroad and you continue on your way. And what this does in effect, in my opinion, is it makes a lot of countries a lot less fun to play that are small or don't have a lot of states or are relatively backwards. So, for example, playing someone like Transvaal is going to be a lot worse. They have a single state, it has 33 infrastructure, they will get a decent amount of money from the fact that they get gold mines, right? And they get gold, but you will just like, you'll build up to a level 5 construction center and then you'll be like, hey, where'd all my infrastructure go? And these guys don't start with railroads, they're relatively close, but like more backward countries like Sokoto, for example, it's going to, if you get your market going and you start to crank up, you're going to very easily run out of infrastructure if you have like level 10 usage in a lot of places and like this sort of thing. Now, I think that this might be kind of because they want more local economies built out and stuff to be built wide, and so they are just trying to discourage this building tall and abusing the state construction efficiency you have from building all the construction sectors in one place. If it becomes the case that you just kind of have to spread out rather than stacking the state construction efficiency modifier, then it's less of a problem in terms of pushing economies of scale. And so what we might see, instead of building all our manufacturing here in New York, for example, we spread it out around, and so we have a tooling workshop in New York, and then we, like, in Pennsylvania we have a clothing place, and then in Ohio we have the furniture, and then in here we have the glassworks, and it leads out to more spread out and specialized economies, and maybe this is what they're trying to promote with this change. They really didn't discuss, like, or publicly speaking, I didn't see any mention of anything implying this sort of change, and so was a little bit surprised by it, and I think it makes a lot of, like, more difficult runs more difficult. It is especially a kick in the nuts to you know, countries that have severe infrastructure negative infrastructure modifiers, because it just exacerbates an already bad problem. We have, you know, usage 10 out of 7, just kind of like base here. Although they did buff, in particular, the Andes. It used to be minus 20%, now it's minus 10, so specifically the Andes is like a lot better, but like a country like Sardinia and Piedmont, it was the most commonly complained one I saw on Reddit, where they already have a construction, or the state, state construction efficiency and infrastructure malice. Generally, you would overcome infrastructure malices or state construction efficiency malices by building a ton of construction centers into place, because math, and you would like get the bonus from state construction efficiency to help override it. But now, if you do that, you're just going to run into the problem of not having enough stuff. So, in terms of metagame, how do you play when you are going to run out of infrastructure when you're building stuff? What is it you're going to be doing is, if you are playing a country that doesn't have railroads, what you're going to do is, instead of going over the infrastructure, you're going to juggle stuff to the bottom. So here we have a furniture manufactory that we're about to finish in Ohio. We would just unpause. We see it's about to go to 1 week, and then once it gets to 1 week, what we will do is we will juggle it to the bottom of the queue, and we will just not let it finish, and you will just accumulate and stockpile like 50, 60, however many buildings that are just about to finish but haven't finished yet. This is kind of like the optimal way to play. It's incredibly tedious. You don't necessarily have to do this. You can just pause construction or whatever, but this is going to be a more common thing that you would have to do if you're trying to play absolutely as good as possible. Okay, so that is the construction change. I think it's pretty significant, especially for middling countries. For extra small countries, I think they overall will actually get buffed, because in 1.5, which isn't through yet, they will be increasing the amount of base level construction from 5 to 10. And so for the really, really small countries, they will overall benefit from changes, but the infrastructure change specifically does not help them. Yeah, people are just going to run out of infrastructure like really fast. Like, imagine playing as Brunei. Look at this. This is the AI Brunei, and they have a few things, a smattering of things. Well, they have all of their arable land fully built out, but they have like no infrastructure, so you build like 1 or 2 construction centers, and then you're like, I'm sad. So you got to expand a lot more into places where you have turmoil and such. Okay, so that is that. Next, we have to talk about changes, which I think are actually quite substantive, and that is changes to the way that substitute goods are going to work. And so let's come into the needs thing. So you can substitute one good for another in terms of needs. It used to be the case that Pops would basically just eat grain, and grain had the heaviest weight, and then there was a half weight on meat and fruit. No more. Now they have even weights. So this is going to make corn laws harder to push in the early game, because you would have to get, in order to proc corn laws, you have to get grain to plus 25%. But now, if grain trends up above like plus 10%, they'll start eating meat and fruit, fish, or meat and fruit instead. So you would actually have to push grain not only up to 25%, you'd have to push meat and fruit. But not only these, but now fish has a heavier weight than grain, so your Pops will tend to prefer to consume fish to grain, which will actually depress the price of grain a bit, and also a heavier weight on groceries. And so this is pretty significant, just like in terms of the corn laws specifically. But what this is going to mean is fish prices are generally going to be up, grocery prices are generally going to be up, and the price of grain is generally going to be down. And then relative to the before, meat and fruit are going to be up, because remember, they used to have a half weight, and now they will track a little bit more strongly with grain, although they might be, their prices might be more contingent on their use as a luxury food. And so this is how the food change has come in. Now, my understanding of intoxicants is that they have removed, and I'm not 100% certain of this, they have removed the amount, the splits for both intoxicants and luxury drinks, which means now I believe you can get 100% fulfillment from any one good, rather than, I think it was like 60% or 40% before, so you would need to use 2 goods. It used to be the case that you would need to use 2 goods. I believe that has been taken out of the game. It certainly has been taken out on the wiki, but I haven't examined the game files myself. But what this significantly changes is now you can be much more predisposed towards liquor and opium, and this is generally preferable, because if we go into the PMs, opium, let's see, no, we gotta go into agriculture. Opium is one of the most, actually it's just the most efficient PM in the game in terms of boosting your GDP per construction efficiency once you get on automatic irrigation. And so opium is considerably better than tobacco. And so you would prefer to have all opium and all liquor as well, because liquor is industrial owned. And kind of also talking about this is with the food changes, and we're going to talk about this more, I think groceries is going to be an insane good, and is going to be considerably better. But let's just jump back into the needs and kind of talk about a couple other things, or mainly, I don't have a strong opinion developed on how services will change as the game develops, because I need to play a longer and deeper game for this, but my understanding is the weighting is a little bit heavier now for services, so they will get consumed a little bit more. But then the cap, there's a new cap or something to this effect. Automobiles notably have a higher weight, so it'll be interesting to see if Pops actually consume automobiles. And if this is the case, for free movement, this means transportation prices will overall be down, and automobile prices will be up, here as well. But this remains to be seen, but maybe you can actually use multiple automobile manufacturers now, before you used to not be able to really. But the one I'm really interested in is this oil here. And while we have been inspecting this in the USA run here, it seems to be a little bit bugged out. So Pops really aren't consuming oil in our market here, and I think this is a bug, not how this is going to be, it's supposed to be portrayed, but oil is very, very cheap, and for the most part, our Pops are not consuming it. We're actually exporting it to create buy orders more than anything else, but there's really barely any buy orders from Pop consumption, which if it has a heavier weight than coal, it should really be what they're consuming. If we come in here and just kind of briefly show, it's not operating how the numbers suggest it would, which is that oil should be getting consumed way more than coal for heating. We see that this is the only thing that the Pops use the coal for is heating, and they are consuming more coal than they are oil, despite the fact that oil is cheaper and has a higher weight, coal having a weight of 1.5. So, just kind of jumping back into the browser here, and talking about it. In theory, though, if oil actually gets consumed the way it should, and by the way, in this run we have in the United States, in other countries that aren't ours, it seems to be consumed because it's like plus 30% price in Japan, where they produce some oil. If this happens, we will have a situation where, the whaling stations get really good, because remember, meat can now substitute grain. So meat prices, if meat prices gets lowered, this will prevent your queue from constructing grain. So this is generally a good thing because this is agrarian owned, so producing meat is good. Whaling produces meat, and whaling also produces oil. Currently, whaling is not very good because oil prices are always, or currently being 1.3.6, whaling is not very good because oil prices and meat prices tend to get a little bit depressed. But if meat's a substitute for grain, it's not going to get depressed as much. And if oil is a substitute that's preferred for heating, oil prices should actually tend to be trend relatively high. And so this means that whaling is going to be really good because fishing is already really good, and the output of fishing on just regular trawlers is 700, or this is the net. Keeping in mind these only take 8 weeks to construct relative to like a manufacturer 24. So like a manufacturer needs to 3x this output, and this is the output per construction. And so whaling is going to be considerably better if the oil actually works the way it should. Although a caveat for fishing and whaling in general is that these industries generally have a low ceiling on economies of scale, which is in the note right there. So this is kind of the superficial explanation of all these changes, or these changes as it relates to substitution. Now, there is also a pretty big thing here, which is that I think groceries might be an insane good now. And I think the metagame might shift from going tools into clothes, which admittedly, the tools into clothes metagame, I need to reevaluate that. I've evaluated this a couple times, and I've felt that tools into clothes is better than tools into furniture, but also felt that I might just be mistaken. But now I think tools into groceries might just be better. And so in order to unpack this, let's jump into game and take a closer look at some of the stuff. Specifically, let's look in Tennessee here, where we have our food industries. Or actually, let's just look at the buildings real quick. So we have the same number of food industries and textile mills, and if we look at the productivity, our food industries are more productive. So this is just first off, now they're going to have different input good prices. This isn't necessarily indicative of anything. We might have certain techs but not have other techs. Notably furniture, we have a very similar amount of these as well, and these are more profitable than the food industries by a little bit, but also furniture is you unlock all the PMs earlier, and so it's not necessarily the same, and so they can't necessarily be compared in a direct way. But even if it's not just talking productivity, so the productivity is up, is kind of the takeaway. Food industries actually don't have, their PMs in the abstract are not tremendous in terms of increasing the outputs or increasing their PMs in terms of efficiency, the inputs relative to the outputs aren't crazy. They're not as good as textiles and the other ones. However, with the new substitution weightings, if groceries has a 1.5 weight and grain has a 1 weight, what will end up happening is pops will overconsume groceries, and so this will make grocery prices higher and make grain prices lower. If grain prices are lower, that's actually one of the inputs for the groceries, and then the groceries prices being higher means that pops will consume more of it, and if they're consuming more of it, the sell price is higher, which makes it easier to have a positive weekly balance. And so when we look at what the effects are from producing a ton of liquor and a ton of groceries in terms of our market, we actually really like these effects. If we look at the effects that we have from furniture doesn't sub a bunch of things. Furniture, it just subs itself. It subs for wood. Wood is fulfills the basic need for furniture, and then luxury furniture subs for other luxuries. But other than that, there's not a prolific amount of subbing that's going on. And the groceries have previously just sucked because they're not very profitable, but now they're profitable. And when we build groceries, it really doesn't consuming a lot of stuff that is agrarian owned anyways. It's the sugar and the spice and everything nice. No, it's the sugar and the grain. So first of all, our inputs on luxury, on agrarian goods are actually less than the clothing. Proportional of the input costs, clothing will have much more input costs that are agrarian owned, which is not preferred to stimulate these because then your auto queue wants to build these. So that's like thing one. Also, I think another reason that the furniture is, even though it makes more money, might not be good, is because it's competing for the wood and the fabric and the tool. Most of its inputs are also your inputs for construction, and you would prefer that your construction is eating most of these goods, I think, in the early game, just because of how like the construction loop feedback works, but which might be why food industries are even better to focus on early. But so our inputs aren't very expensive, and also, as we produce more grain, this will depress the price of one of the inputs more. As we produce more groceries, this will depress the price of the grain more. It'll stimulate the price of fish, right? They're substitutes. They're even substitutes for each other, so it might not stimulate. I'm not sure if it stimulates because it's an input or if it depresses because it's a substitute. I actually am not 100% sure. But then we have glass, so you would have to build more glass early on, but this is kind of fine. And iron, which you're going to be getting anyways. And like these are the inputs for the early PMs. And we have the outputs of groceries and liquor. Jumping back into kind of looking at the tab, what effects is this going to have if we decide to focus on this early? Well, first of all, we're going to depress the price of meat, fruit, and grain, and then we're going to increase, by creating a bunch of the substitute, this will depress the price of fruit, meat, and grain, which we don't want to build because they're agrarian owned, which this is going to, if the price is depressed, then our auto queue will build it less. So this is good. But second of all, when we export the groceries to other countries, we're going to depress the price of their grain as well, in theory, which means we can import it and use it as an input from them more aggressively. This is how I think this will work in terms of effects, kind of small sample size here. But this is tremendous because we are going to get a profitable industry, and that industry is not only going to be profitable, it's also going to make our entire economy more industrial oriented. And why is this significant? Well, just to kind of cover something that we talk about a lot, is we would prefer to have our ownership of buildings be capitalist owned because they contribute 20% of their dividends to the investment pool, and the investment pool gets positively modified by the bonuses of the trade unions and laissez-faire, which creates money out of nothing. If we look at, a more agrarian-oriented stuff like the maize, the thing we are trying to depress, we will see that, well, this one is actually owned by farmers and aristocrats, but very often they are owned privately by just aristocrats, which only contribute 10% to the investment pool. With homesteading, it's split between aristocrats and farmers, and aristocrats contribute 10% and farmers contribute 5%. So less is going to the investment pool, but not only this, you do not have a juice on the aristocrats anyways. You have a juice on the aristocrats, but you're obviously not getting, often not getting it. So for example, we have the southern planters here, and we have this juice here for the investment pool contribution efficiency. So this is kind of why it's preferred that we have our economy like that. Jumping back into the browser here and talking about this, we are decreasing, we're increasing the proportion of our economy that's going to be groceries. And I think that when you start exporting groceries, this is going to help facilitate the import of grain. And building fish is great and fine because fish is capitalist owned. And so you are eliminating, a lot of landowner owned stuff in your industry. So that's thing one with like the groceries. Now there's kind of a lot going on whenever you have a dual track good, because both groceries and liquor are created, and so you can, if you want, you can try and increase the price of liquor to decrease the price of groceries, or increase the price of groceries to decrease the price of liquor. And I don't have a huge strategy on this, other than Muslims have a taboo for liquor. So if you're a Muslim country, you want to export liquor as aggressively as possible because your pops won't want to consume it. But moving down into the intoxicants here, again, if we are outputting a ton of liquor, and liquor is a substitute for tobacco, the tobacco industry will also get depressed. And so this means, again, we are avoiding an agrarian good where otherwise our auto queue would want to build it. Now, opium's extremely efficient, so I don't think it's a big deal to worry about depressing opium, but liquor in theory will do that a little bit if the liquor price gets sufficiently low. Now, if the liquor price and the grocery price are extremely low, this will mean your industry is not very profitable and you'll want to export, but okay. Overall, if you are producing a ton of groceries, they will probably trend to be a little bit lower, and also the equilibrium price of grains should be considerably lower than groceries as a result of this weighting very often. And so I think that this means that I'm not 100% sold on it, but it's possible that you want tools to be your first industry because it's part of like the construction loop in that you need it for producing both wood and iron and also for your iron frame construction. So I still think tools is king in terms of the first industry you focus on. But I think that what is going to change now after 1.4, and this is tentative with regards to how local prices work, but I think that there's a fairly good shout or chance that you will want to kind of focus food industry second. And so also, these new substitutions are just greatly improving a few industries, namely food industry seems a lot better. I think that the increased weighting on fish also improves fish a decent amount. Where are we? Oh, okay, there they are. The fishing wharves. I think this improves this a decent amount as well because they have a heavier weighting. So the price will trend higher than grain, which is perfect because this is capitalist owned. And similarly, along the same veins, although the game, it always starts out merchant guild owned and then you have to swap it over. So don't forget to do that. Similarly, I think that if this is working properly, which I don't think it is, the price of oil should get relatively high because pops will prefer to consume it. And the price of meat will be higher relative to 1.3.6, and I think whaling stations will be extremely good, especially because the whaling and the, what is it? The groceries, these take 24 weeks to construct one of these. But with the whaling and the fisheries specifically, these take 8 weeks to construct, if I'm not mistaken. And so what this will do is it'll allow you to get rid of peasants really quickly as well, or de-peasant your country in a way that's particularly nice. Normally, most of the 8-week construction things are either logging or agrarian, but now focusing more on specifically fish and whales, I think will be a lot better. And fish, notably, if you focus on fish while you're doing the tools and the construction loop, then that transitions nicely into, after that, focusing on food industries, because you get to produce the fish up into groceries, and then this depresses the price of grain. It creates some demand for sugar, but this is not the biggest deal. But as we see, it's also relatively profitable. So, we have these food industry, because of replacement effects, is going to decrease the demand or the price of agrarian goods. And when we're comparing it to textile mills, if the profitability is similar and this is just increasing our demand for these goods, then perhaps as terms of the second industry to focus on, it might be food. Now, I think that you'll probably want to have both at some point, and also the changes to construction probably make it so you want to spread stuff out a little bit. And so there's a good shout that you are transitioning earlier to having one kind of center for each of these. Like, for example, we have Tennessee is where we are building a majority of our food industries. For our textile mills, the majority are in New York, and then for furniture manufacturers, the majority are in Ohio. It might be the case that spreading out in this way is going to be a little bit better because construction, but overall, I think that this is a pretty substantive change with how needs are going to be working moving forward after 1.4, and is going to let you an industry that previously just wasn't very good is going to be considerably better, not because the PMs have been improved, but because this weighting just means groceries will be more expensive. If we take a look at and this is not, the groceries PMs is not the most readable because it's a try PM, but like if we have pot stills, this adds, I believe, 750, and we might not have canneries super early. you know, if we have pot stills and sweeteners, then our like net is 700 plus 8 this, so it's 850, which is not that high considering it's 24. But maybe we're on canneries too. I don't know. But it's not that high really, given that it takes 24 weeks to make. But somehow these are still profitable because the prices get to be high. You know, if our outputs on groceries are just if you imagine that this output is just 50% higher, right? Because groceries are plus, or let's imagine it 30% higher because groceries are plus 33% on price. Now suddenly, instead of 1K, this is 2K. And so despite the PMs not being great for creating, this is, you know, the efficiency per construction for increasing GDP. This is the efficiency into the investment pool. And then this is not considering baking powder and vacuum canning and stuff. But this is going to, the equilibrium price being higher is like what is going to make groceries better, I think. And so as far as needs go, this is going to, I think, shake things up quite a bit. We will see with local goods prices, it might just be the case that because logging is so good and you want to focus logging in one place because for economies of scale, it might just be that wood's insane. But for right now, as in right now, for patch 1.4, one of the major takeaways is going to be that this change in replacement goods effects is going to really affect how you look at food. And it's going to shake things up in that regard. Anyways, I hope this update has been, nice. I will probably be streaming tomorrow when patch 1.5 drops, and we'll be kind of exploring a lot of this stuff, but for patch 1.4, this is kind of my conclusions after 10 or so hours of kind of playing and trying to really push and explore some of these ideas with replacement goods. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm stuff, and other than that, have a good one.